I'm Christopher Angelo. I'm with New Energy Risk, and we are the leading provider of technology insurance in the waste to value industry. And we'd be happy to meet with you and learn more about your projects or how we can partner together within our existing and expanding network within the waste to value ecosystem. And what we also have here today is we have a schematic of a hypothetical project here, just to put it that way. And what we are going to go through is review the aspects of this transaction here, from the aspects of, on the, whether it's the developer, the buy side, or the sell side, in terms of how you're thinking about financing a project. How would a company like Richards, think about this? And then in terms of on the developer side, of which many of you are in the audience here, how do you think about organizing a project for financing? Because it's really, the long game, and thinking about how you start, who you make those first phone calls to, and why is really, really important. And we look forward to learning from those here today. So I'll turn it over to Richard, you first, for an introduction, then Brett, we'll go to you. Thanks everybody for your time, and thanks Jeff for having us here again.
Thanks everyone. Mic's working? Good. Thank you to Christopher for inviting me. I wanted to say I'm happy to see the Spanish team here. I spent my first third of my career building paper mills in Spain, so I'm really happy to see those guys here. My name is Richard Balkin. I work currently for DNV, which is a independent engineering, independent certification consultancy. There's 12,000 of us. There's 350 based in North America, focused solely on energy transition, right? And engineers and scientists. Prior to that, I spent the last 8 years working for Export Development Canada in their project finance team, doing technical due diligence. And 8 years, the preceding 8 years, I spent in Australia doing engineering design. So my role here today is, the invite is to come at it from the technical due diligence side for project finance. And over to you, Brett.
Hi, I'm Brett Jackson. I'm president of Hydrogen Naturally. And just before I get deep in my history here, sometimes intelligence is just persistence masquerading as intelligence. So I'm ultra persistent, and I think that shines through in a few ways. I don't know about the intelligence level, but I'll take the compliment. I started my life off in manufacturing many years ago, and started a company in there, and I lived by the whole world of lump sum, fixed schedule. You own the engineering costs, you own all the problems that go with that. So that's where the persistence came in, and you just grind through that for many years, and you come out the back end, and now going towards the world of a developer, you're taking all those experiences, and really as you build these projects, they're just a series of those smaller projects that live by the same guidelines, the same rules, the same physics. So I'm just reapplying that here. In the last 4 or 5 years, I worked on the gasification with the Northwest Refinery. That's where I gained my expertise and my experience there on that technical level. But the big picture is I come up with an idea, build the business around it with good economics, figure out what the market is, put it together, build it to last, and then carry on. That's what we've done. My manufacturing company I started quite a few years ago still runs on its own and carries on without me. So I like to leave things that are sustaining and carry into the future.
Excellent, thanks for that. And so Brett, well actually we'll start with you. And so I think you actually brought it up here. You talk about, you have your idea as a developer, and you're going to organize a business case around it. And let's use this transaction structure that we have in front of us here as the idea and the general structure of what a developer may be looking to build. And as you can see, there are a number of let's say, major, airlines that are involved here. And of course, the feedstock that we're talking about is municipal solid waste. And, the other parties which are here, again, there are no names that are here, but, when you are making the phone calls to the parties to execute this project, and you're given the go-ahead, the funds by the board, everything else, what are you recommending to them, who you're getting in contact with, and why?
It's a completely, it's not a sequential process at any level. And so I think that's where a lot of projects end up going. They start with the technology first, and then they're trying to find a market for that technology. And so some of the pieces are sort of force fit. I think in this case here, I look at the blocks here, and right away I go to feedstock, and I think, that's a difficult feed to start with. It's complex. Municipal solid waste is probably one, from a consistency standpoint, one of the most varying. And so right away you're introducing engineering, design, cost, risk, when there's other feeds, and I'll lean towards biomass and forestry fiber, which that's what we're working on, and it's consistent. So you've removed a major obstacle that can really cause a lot of problems all throughout the process. And the other thing, I walk across the board and I look at the off takes, and I mean, if you got major airlines in there, it's really going to come down to what kind of term of that contract are you looking for. Like you need to understand if it's going to be a spot market or if you're actually building out contract terms that are, starting to look like 10, 20 years. So you have to align the feedstock terms and the rate that you can contract them at and the length, and then look at the offtake, and does that actually solve the cost model that they're trying to solve. You need to solve a problem, then you look at the stuff above and get into the technology.
And you're referring to risks, and you're referring to solving problems, and in the way that we think about that in the financing markets, right, and with project developers, right, is what is financeable, right, at the end of the day. And so an experienced developer like yourself, right, you're thinking about what is that end picture, what's that end solution that will be not only bankable in the market, but also attractive to a potential equity investor, right? And then working backwards. And so appreciate some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, well, it's like the flying car example Ian used. I mean, we were, dreaming of flying cars, but we were driving around in V8s, while we were doing it at the same time. So it was quite a step to go from there to the future. I think in this case here, like, the idea here is we're trying to decarbonize. It's a cost basis, initiative. I know there's environmental side, but you have to understand the economics at the end user's point, and then work backwards to figure out how do you get there. On the one thing that we see quite a bit is you make sort of speculative decisions all the way through that it could be this or it could be that, and until you actually start to figure out what your business will do within the market constraints, and how it's going to actually, how that value is going to be extracted from that. You have to, understand what the willingness to pay will be, and then figure out from there how can you support that economic structure, and that's sort of the top end of the decision chain for my perspective. So.
Great, thanks. Yeah. And Richard, so when Brett brings the transaction to you, with the hypothetical transaction structure that we have in front of us here, what are you specifically looking at in any order of priority, and why?
So if I put my old EDC hat on, I'd be looking at, I don't have an issue with separating, EPC and technology, because it seems here that Project Co is going directly contracting the technology and the major equipment suppliers, and and then separately the EPC, right? I don't have an issue with that. I think that's still bankable. It doesn't have to be a full EPC wrap with performance and technology all under the EPC. But of course, everything goes into the risk model. So is this slightly riskier, this model, than a full performance guarantee wrap? For sure. Project finance providers, lenders, don't like technology risk. They typically, they fill their risk plate with construction risk and market risk, and there's very little appetite for technology risk. The stuff that you do and that New Energy Risk does and Munich Re certainly helps make it more palatable. But that's where we like to make sure that a key feature is the independent engineer, right? And lots of proponents would come to in the door for those first couple of meetings saying, we did some independent engineering for our equity partners. Can we rely on that again? And to some extent, you can have a look at it and leverage some of it. But the independent engineer that you pick along with your debt provider needs to be, their duty of care needs to be towards the lender, not the equity partner. There are certain conflicts of interest there, right?
Sure. And so within the EPC contract itself, again, for the transaction that's here, what are some of the critical attributes or provisions within that contract, or the status of the engineering that you would be looking to in order to give the project itself the stamp of approval, right? And what we're talking about is so critical because a gating item to get to capital at the end of the day, permanent capital for project financing, is going to be the debt capital and or the equity capital. So the stages of front end loading or the FEED engineering are absolutely critical as those are completed and fit into the financing process here. And again, going back to that question, what are some of those some of the critical items within the EPC contract, whether it's a term sheet or a contract itself, which you would like to see, whether it's an article related to liquidated damages or total amount of liability that the contractor is willing to take, or is there certain level of engineering that you expect the project to be at, where you're going to give it the green light it needs to advance into permanent funding?
Yes to all of the above. You need to right size the budget. You need to right size the contingency, and then when I used to be I suppose within the an industrial firm building out paper mills, we used to think about the budget and the contingency, and that's all we cared about, right? Protecting the contingency. Coming at it from a project finance lens, you assume the contingency is being spent. It's gone. Is it right-sized? Question number one, but you assume it's going to be spent. Number two, there's a cost overrun facility. So that's the lender's contingency, not the sponsor's contingency. And is that right-sized? And to right-size that, you need to really evaluate, quantify risk, all the risks, including technical risk, technology risk, and that's where you come back to how strong the team is, the proponents team, how strong and how deep-pocketed the EPC firm is. You don't want them to fold, or that you model in, if they were to fold, collapse, how much would it cost, time and budget to replace them? And of course, LDs help, but I don't see them as a silver bullet. But I think deep-pocketed partners are a key.
And Brett, down to you then. So how are you as the developer, approaching the project structuring, knowing that you're going to have to either from the earliest days work with an independent engineer to have a report or review of your project engineering and its risk mitigation levels that you're going to put in front of, whether it's future equity investors or even a bank to get the process started with them. How do you think about that in different engineering like the FEL process, things like that?
I think the number one starts with, as the developer, you own the outcome, no matter how much insurance or wrap is put on something. And we had a significant learning experience for myself and everybody involved when the refinery started up and the key gasification unit didn't function. So licensed technology, 70-year experience behind the design, and it didn't start, didn't run, and so it suddenly created this big gap between commissioning and commercial operation. That was, at the time, it was a very difficult path to get through. And at that time, you can't do anything other than just look internally and try to solve the problem. So that same lens has to be applied all the way through, not from a lack of trust, but you need within your own team, within your own house, an expert who can assess those reports and look at the calculations and look at the designs and give you an unbiased, unfiltered look at it, not on the equity side, not on the EPC side, but you have to really challenge that. The developer has to have that experience all the way through, right from the technology to startup, construction, manufacturing. It really has to be all-inclusive, because there's too many areas that, whether you have a large team or not, but if you don't have the expertise within that, you can miss those critical details. And some of them, at the time, the gasifier probably looked like a pretty small detail in the construction of a large refinery. At the end, it became the most important detail, and that's vital. So that's, from the lens of a developer, know your business and know your technology. So.
And at what point in the process do you recommend approaching, whether it's a lender or an equity investor?
Well, it starts fairly early on. I mean, you're trying to develop, talked about the data room template, right? You're trying to build that out. Every time you go to meet them, you get smarter. What they're looking for, what you need to do to seal off those loops. So it's not necessarily something that you want to delay, because it can streamline and speed up your process of getting ready for it. But whatever you have in your data room needs to be something that you've put there, you understand, and you can speak to. Once that really is assembled by communicating with the lenders and with the potential equity partners. So I would say it starts fairly early.
And Richard, over to you. When would you expect someone to come to you? Because as the developer, anyone who's sitting down, we're trying to get a project done, we're trying to get it financed, right? We all want it done tomorrow or in 2 and 3 months, right, as we were discussing earlier. But the reality is, right, projects take a long time to execute in terms of like, babies born, marriages, that kind of thing. Somewhat of a reality, and of course, depending on the size and complexity of a project. But Richard, when would you expect a project for you to see it, whether it's the first time or whether you're taking a half-hour call or spending some more substantive time where you're actually engaging with a partner?
Well, PF takes, project finance, the process of first engaging with the lender through to, due diligence, and it's not just technical, but market due diligence and insurance due diligence. It's easily 8 months. Easily 8 months. I would say the quickest it can be done is 6 months. I've seen it done 4 months, but that was a bit of a failure, and I can come back to that example a little bit later on. But count, if you're a developer and you have you have put your notice to proceed, or your final investment decision at some point X in the future, work back at least 8-10 months from that, and that's when you start approaching your probably with a financial advisor or directly with a lender such as Export Development Canada. That's when you start engaging with them. If you start engaging with them 2 months out because you wanted to have all your homework done and all engineering done, they're going to say, well, we need 6 months at the very minimum, right? So start talking to them at about 8 months out, 8-10 months out. And then you want to be at FEL2, or what that means is you've done enough engineering that your cost estimate uncertainty is around plus minus 25% when you start talking to them, and by the time you reach financial close, you're at the 10 to 15%. You could, in some projects, it could be higher than that, but it means that you need to have higher contingencies and deeper pockets. But you're looking about 8 months, and then you really want to have their input when you're negotiating your final EPC contract. I wouldn't say go ahead and completely finalize those negotiations without bringing your lenders on board.
And how does your process work? So say, for example, that a developer comes to you and they do have a FEL2 package. How are you working with them and or guiding them through their project financing?
So we split up. The first look at a company from my technical perspective is, where are you in terms of technology readiness level? Are you at least at a 7, which that means you've passed lab scale, you're at pilot scale, you're at a decent and the scale up to commercial scale isn't several orders of magnitude, right? We want to look at that. We want to look at your siting is done. Don't come with 5 sites that you've got lots of options, because they don't want to hear, banks, lending institutions don't want to hear that you got lots of options. They want to know that you've got a well-defined project. They want to know that you've decided what product you're going to, or products you're going to focus on. Not that we can make green hydrogen, we can flip to ammonia, or we can switch it to something else. It's not really what a lending institution wants to hear. So siting, you've fixed on your products. Engineering is at FEL2, plus minus 25% when you start talking to them. But, and your permitting is underway at the very least, or you have a very clear understanding of where that is. You have a line of sight to equity. And that's it. I can't think of anything else. Yeah.
Excellent. So, in the case of the project that we, have in front of us, if this came to you and there were term sheets that were present for a number of the relationships which are described here, my guess is, the sounds of it that you definitely take the call, but you would obviously focus on where they are in the engineering process. If you're just to know that this is an idea that they have, right?
I'll just throw in that municipal solid waste is, you could say, call it the Holy Grail, right? But I'm yet to see a project, maybe other than Enerchem. I haven't heard and read about lots of projects being commercially successful at scale. I hope to see lots of them. I haven't read about lots, that many, other than Enerchem in Edmonton. So that's certainly a red flag, right? That is certainly technology risk right there.
Excellent. And Brett, down to you. Given what he just mentioned there, how would that adjust your approach to the capital markets?
I think the key one I'd add on top of that is what's your feedstock contracts and your access to feed, but how secure are those? And then the back end of it, what do your offtakes look like for whatever products are coming out? And I think and access to credit markets, carbon credit markets, and how that revenue stack is. That's a critical part. The capital costs and the technologies really sort of need to conform to what your business model is, not vice versa all the time. And we look at it on our side here. We think forestry waste is abundant. It's a great source. It's a carbon carrier. That's an excellent feedstock for what we need to produce, which is carbon negative hydrogen. And with CCS, so gasification is an excellent technology to fit that. So we'll conform the gasification to fit that model. So if you think you start from the top down and get into that, then you have a more solidified business case when you go in. So. Sure,
and I think something the term of art that you had previously used when we were talking was the word simple, right? And trying to keep it simple and nothing too overly complex. And I definitely echo that in terms of execution.
Further that too, it's the, when we get into the simplicity of it is there's already enough variables in a lot of the factors that you're working with. So, when you're looking at trying to do something quickly, that's the other thing is actual time to commercialization. That's really important. And again, we don't need to complicate that by adding new technologies or doing science experiments within this process. And so, from our perspective, that's, we know the technologies that work, we know where the feedstock is, and so it's relatively a simple process when you look at it. There's enough complexity already on how to make that work with offtakes, and the longer the better, and the more solid those are, then you can see and you can show the equity providers and the debt financiers, how that structure will pan out in a couple different scenarios, but it's not complex when they look at it. It has to be simplified down. That's
excellent. Thank you very much. Well, we've just got a couple more minutes here. And to finish up, we wanted to open it up to the audience for any questions. Okay, let's make sure I can read these. Are deep pocket partners avoidable or available? I think, all right. It was written in cursive. That's. Richard, I'll turn that over to you.
That's maybe a bit of a wishful thinking, I would say. I've seen projects, number of them, lots of them during my 8 years in project finance. Some succeed, some never make it to financial close, and some fail after financial close. Deep pockets help. They're not a silver bullet. I think back to, we're talking about time of execution, which is important, time to market, but also allowing enough time for proper project finance preparation, right? And one of the examples that went south, proponent comes in, high net worth individuals, deep pocketed, already under construction, looking for project finance, and super bullish in terms of getting it done really quickly, right? And there was another finance debt provider also bullish to says, come on, PFT, you're my PFT. Why don't you just get on board? That was done in 4 months, which is usually not enough, right? And it takes 4 months alone for the technical due diligence work stream, right? In this case, the borrowers walked across the road and knocked on the door of an engineering office. And it's a global, reputable firm with a small office nearby where the project was sited. And we kind of went along with, okay, I suppose they can do it. They're close by and everything. It was not the right, it was maybe the right firm. It wasn't the right team of independent engineers. So the expertise wasn't there, and the technology ultimately failed. They couldn't get past commissioning. So what I'm saying is, allowing enough time to find the right independent engineering team, and not just the firm, is key, right? And not just key for the lenders, but key to the actual proponent, I think, the borrower.
So that's a great point here, noting that with your experience with EDC, because the follow-up question here was, who are they, right? So the likes of EDC and Brett, of course, your colleague, you're talking about the ranges of up to $12 billion or so. So curious, on the equity side, what type of participants are with you, partnering in that investment?
I think the ideal partners are, in early stage ones, of course, are ones that bring credibility to the project, not necessarily the amount they bring in for equity, but does their name being involved and does their agenda and their recognition in the market add, additional value outside of just the placement, and that sometimes is worth a lot more in terms of credibility. So, I think there's deep pockets around, and some are right and some are wrong. So, the wrong deep pockets with the mismatch with the project, or it can be detrimental. But you can get a group who have the right right ability to open doors and get you into markets, or to help you get the off takes that you need.
Thanks for that. So
One more.
one more. Okay. So why don't I take this one? There was one that was relevant here, and that seemed a bit related to insurance here. So it says, where do panelists view assurance tools like contracts for difference as important in financing? So I'd be happy to take that and just note that, look, investors have a choice of their alternatives with investing, and what they need to do then is take opportunities to their on the lending side to credit risk committee or credit committee, and then of course on the equity side you're going to go to investment committee. And at the end of the day, investing is going to be about risk and reward, right? So tools like a contract for difference or other potential insurance products are critical to distinguishing a product from a risk perspective, such that compared to alternatives, it has superior risk-adjusted returns, right? Such then you could market it effectively as an advantaged project relative to others. So if anyone has any other questions about that, I'd be happy to take that. And with that, love to thank our panelists for being here, and Jeff and team, thanks again for having us.
Thank you very much. Yes.